And I always think it's funny when I always get an email every morning from IQ on show days where he goes, "What surprises do you have for me today?" And I always send him the bio information of the guests, and he always sends stuff back. And today he just sent, "Wow." So, Jeffrey, tell us a little bit about what you do, because I wanted to get you and Dan Perkins together because Dan, you have a charity. Jeffrey has a charity.
Right.
This is going to be amazing. So Jeffrey, tell us about your project and everything that you're doing here, my friend, because you've got a hell of a story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me start by saying that I serve as president of Healing the Wounds. That's the charity. And the organization was chartered to help children who lost parents in service to country um, and community. And you know, you and I had spoken earlier about it, but so much of society is laser focused on negative things, what's wrong, and we created Healing the Wounds as a solutions-based organization to focus on the positive and to build character, self-confidence, and leadership skills with an end goal of preparing these teenagers to lead successful lives as responsible citizens. So that's the background on it. From my personal experience, we've gone over my background in the past, but I spent 38 consecutive summers up in KJAG, Alaska. Much of the time I was guiding, I was taking families out into the wilderness, children, sportsmen. I did it to clear my head of other things that I was involved with. And I just felt compelled to try and put something together to help these kids, because these teenagers, a lot of them are having a tough time in life. They've suffered a parental loss. These are kids that lost one parent, once again in service to country or community. And I just felt that the best thing we could do for them is to take them out of their environments and bring them somewhere else and introduce them to things that are awe-inspiring. And that was the thrust behind the organization. So early on, the U.S. Army reached out to us, and basically they enthusiastically endorsed the mission, and they surprised me because the Army alone has over 20,000 kids under its wings. It's pretty sad. And a lot of the kids, I think as you know, the Gold Star kids have certain advantages, but there are others that don't fall under that category. When we first formed the charity, the idea was to help Gold Star kids and teenage children who lost parents in service to community, law enforcement. And then we decided to expand beyond that and accommodate children that lost parents in service to community as first responders, but also other children whose the parental loss wasn't necessarily under active duty orders. So we put together the program. It starts with an educational wilderness experience in Alaska that's conducted under the supervision of seasoned professionals and PhDs. We have a couple people on board, their backgrounds, oceanography and marine sciences. Early on, I'm sorry. There's a little bit of feedback, but early on,
No, we're
Captain
good here.
Michael Hawk joined our advisory board. Michael was retired, but he was a U.S. Army Green Beret. He's best known for the work he's done on the Discovery and History channels. And he had, on the Discovery Channel, he was involved with a survival show with his wife called Man, Woman, Wild. Then he did some work, he was involved in a mini-series. It was a documentary that was produced by Leonardo DiCaprio. Michael's traveled the world. He's done his best to help children, and he's always been there. He's been involved in those types of initiatives. but he had volunteered, schedule permitting, to be on the ground up in Alaska to help these children. And he's a real blessing to have aboard. I can't speak highly enough of him. Early on, he started working on putting together a program for the children involving an overnight, once again, to help them build self-confidence and leadership skills. As I mentioned earlier, we hosted a pilot week in the fall of 2019 for half dozen children that were referred by the U.S. Army. And I did my best to simulate the Alaskan program, even though this was hosted in the Northeast. They had the time of their lives, but it was very educational, and they left with something, more than one thing, but they left with something of value. And that was the camaraderie and the way that they related to each other. I never saw anything like it. It was truly heartfelt. It was an active week. It was educational. The University of Connecticut was involved. I had them down. I had them on the water. They were supporting oceanology research. Some research, collecting data, dragging nets, collecting specimens, weighing these specimens, measuring them, recording the data that was being used, once again, for the University of Connecticut's Avery Point branch. But I had them certified in first aid, CPR, and the use of AEDs. And the reason I did that was in the wake of the Parkland shooting, I was honored with an opportunity to serve on a task force. And 20 people came in from all over the country. They were CEOs. They were involved in, some of them had backgrounds with SWAT, special operations, CEOs of security companies. We all got together, we brainstormed for 2 days. It was a think tank, and we came up with 17 recommendations to advance to the administration. The thing that I had homed in on very early on was that I felt that if we educate people and certify them, young people, with life-saving skills, they'd be less apt to take them. And these children left that week. I could tell you that the 2 instructors from the American Heart Association had their full attention from 7:30 to 10:30 at night. And that was after a full day that they were 30, 40, maybe 50 feet up in the trees in an airborne obstacle course, zip lining back and forth in 93-degree weather. It was hot, but they stayed up there. And then I took them once again to this class that I put together. And I didn't see one of these teenagers yawn. These 2 instructors had their full attention, and they could not wait. They were so excited about going home and receiving that AMA certification card in a week or so. And what I took out of it was, as an organization, we're adults. We can provide them with every opportunity to excel. We could provide them with opportunities to learn, educational opportunities. But from an organizational standpoint, the most important thing I think that we did was we provided them with a network through which they could interact with each other and they could support each other. And the pilot program convinced us that we could change young lives by instilling a sense of hope through education, outdoor experience, and group support. The kids suffered enough. It's tough being a teenager today, but to endure a parental loss like that. Dan, I'm sure you know this. There's a knock on the door at 7 o'clock in the morning and a couple officers standing there, and suddenly the news is broken that dad isn't coming home, or perhaps mom isn't coming home. the full burden of family responsibilities and rearing the children falls on the surviving spouse. They have enough to contend with. You've got the children on top of it. And in many instances, these kids really suffer.
So
The pilot, oh, go ahead, I'm
no,
sorry.
no, 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 no. I was wanting to get Dan and IQ involved in this. Dan, what do you have for Jeffrey?
Well, he's working with children, which is desirable and important to be done. We work with veterans who are suffering from traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, sleep deprivation, and suicide prevention. But veterans also mean spouses. And I've done presentations all over the country where there are widows of veterans who have been widows for a short time or been widows for a long time. I'll never forget, I was in Mystic, Connecticut, and I did a presentation to a VFW hall, and they had a women's auxiliary that was participating in the meeting along with the men. And I did my presentation and I asked for questions, and this woman said to me, she said, "Mr. Perkins, I have sleep deprivation." I said, "Well, I'm sorry to hear that." She said, "I lost 2 of my sons in Afghanistan, and I have not had a good night's sleep in a long time. Would your system help me?" And I said, "Ma'am, I don't know whether it'll help you or not, but I guarantee it won't hurt you, and it just might help you." We started off giving away our MP3 system to veterans and their spouses through the VA system and veteran support organizations. We're now in 131 facilities across the country, and we've given away almost 21,000 players. But I appreciate the work that you're doing with the children. But another area of totally different kind of stress is the surviving spouse, who has to grieve over losing their spouse and at the same time try and raise the children and keep a house together and a home together. So we do have women and or men who ask for the MP3 players, and we're doing something. We've done something new for the last year, and I wanted to share that with you because you don't necessarily have to use our system. We have found after now 6 years in this business that the linchpin is sleep deprivation. If the body does not get to REM level sleep, it can't heal itself, both physically and mentally. And we have an 8-hour on our MP3 system. We have an 8-hour custom designed audio that's designed to help get the individual to REM level sleep. And we continue to offer that. And we have additional on our website, songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. But we've added 2 more protocols, which may be in and of themselves something that you might want to consider. We encourage veterans to consider purchasing a Fitbit or the equivalent of a Charge 64, because a Charge 64 allows you to check and count how much time you spend in the different areas of sleep: awake, REM level sleep, deep sleep, and normal sleep. And so what happens is we've now coupled the REM or the Fitbit 64 with low dose of CBD. And we tell people, start off with a 50 milligram capsule of CBD about an hour before you go to bed, turn on the player, and start when you wake up in the morning, check on your 64 to see whether or not what's happened to your REM level. Good REM level, the doctors tell us, is about 21 to 24% of your total sleep is in REM level sleep. Uh, I have had a problem with sleep for years, and before I started doing this, I had a REM level of about 9 minutes, 9%, and now I typically get in between 21 and 22% of my sleep is REM. And so you don't have to use our player. You can download the music from our website for free, and listen to music and use it in combination with the CBD, the low level of CBD. You create an opportunity to get the body into REM level sleep where it does the greatest amount of healing.
Dan, I just picking up on what you said. My wife is a pulmonologist who does sleep medicine, so you couldn't be more right about lacking REM sleep. But where are you home based?
Southwest Florida in the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay. Because when you brought up Mystic, I live 20 minutes from Mystic. I'm down there all the time. So.
I've traveled all over this country doing presentations on songs and stories, and I was invited. There was a gentleman who had heard me actually on Jim's show several years ago, and he was in Mystic, Connecticut, and he was the program chairman. And he said, "Would you be willing?" At that time, I was living in New Jersey, so it wasn't that big a trip. "Would you be willing to come up and talk to our group?" And I said, "Of course." And so that was not my first trip to Mystic, but my first trip to Mystic dealing with veterans issues.
Sure.
We have, as a society today, the doctors that we talk with about what's going on, is that we're hearing from the CDC that right now about 25% or 1 in 4 adults in this country are dealing with either severe anxiety or depression. 1 in 4, primarily driven by the COVID outbreak and the sequestering and the lack of social interaction. And as we know, even teenage suicide is up, and veteran suicide is up. It's that loneliness. So we're trying to say to the veterans, we know that the nighttime is the most difficult time in your life. That's when the night terrors come. And instead of reaching for a gun or a bottle of pills, we try and get them to reach for the MP3 player and listen to some music or a story, and distract them, but also distract the brain. It truly is amazing, and we got inundated as a result of the pandemic because the veterans hospitals, like the civilian hospitals, were not allowing family members to go in and see their family members in the hospitals.
Right.
And so we were able to get them in through the hospital facility, but we ran out of inventory because of the demand around the country in the hospitals and nursing homes, and for something for the veterans to do while they were isolated and alone. So,
Dan, what surprised, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What I want to tell you was that the last conversation I had with my military contact, we were talking, when they referred the kids for the pilot week, I think you know that somewhere between 70 and 75% of all military casualties are PTS-induced suicides right now. And these were the kids that started to come in our direction. And it doesn't stop with the parent either, because I had a young man from Rhode Island that participated in the program. The military loss was right now pushing 9-10 years ago, but he attempted to take his own life. In 2018, he was only 14.
mm-hmm.
So there's a cycle there, and we're trying to break that cycle.
Yeah, and the challenge that we both have with both of our organizations, the sequestering for now over a year, is put tremendous pressure on not only veterans and their spouses and their children, but the whole country. And the demand for mental health care and dealing with this issue is exacerbated. I mean, the biggest thing that I see, and I'd be interested in knowing about from your children's standpoint, um, the biggest issue that I think has caused a great amount of the anxiety and depression is the inability to have social interaction
Right.
with
Oh,
other
no
people.
question. And even college kids that are non-military, just society today, it's so much worse because they don't have it. And I'll revert back to the pilot program for a minute. It wasn't, we provided a platform for these kids to socialize on a level that they typically don't. And they
Mhm.
had similar backgrounds, and they helped each other along, they encouraged each other along. And one boy in particular really grew from it. It was a life changer after only 1 week, which I found hard to believe, but it was. And I had a conversation with Michael Hawk about a week and a half ago. I called him up and I said, listen, this is the feedback I'm getting from the family. Is this possible that just the 1 week changed everything? And he said, yes, he's seen it before. But like you're saying, um, the lack of socialization. When I brought him in the door, the first thing I did is I had them surrender their smartphones
Mm.
and games that they brought with them, what have you. They were unplugged from the internet for a week.
Right.
And they
Thank the
put them
Lord
right in the
above.
basket and left them to me. And there's a lot of value in that because we all go into, well, before we were going into restaurants and you see young people on dates, they don't even interact. They're sitting there texting other people.
Yeah.
It's worse now. My own daughter she's a pre-med student at UConn, and she hasn't been in class in a year and a half. Everything's by Zoom. And
Right.
she really feels like she's losing out. And it's so much worse for these kids because they can't get out of their current environments. And
Right.
for a lot of them, the environments are tainted.
I had a wonderful experience at the Army base outside of Savannah, and that particular um, Army base has a warrior in transition unit. This is a special unit for soldiers that have had difficulty readjusting to civilian life, and they bring them back out of society, and they work with them and psychological and counseling and everything, and they stay there as long as it takes to try and reassimilate them back into society. And I went over after we talked to a bunch of veterans and met the XO of the hospital. They have a big hospital there, Fort Stewart. And I met the XO. And I told him about our program, and I showed him one of our MP3 players. And he said to me, Mr. Perkins, um, he pulled out his iPhone. And he said, shouldn't you be doing this on an iPhone? And I said, Colonel, do you have an iPhone? And he pulled it out of his pocket. I said, what happens when you walk through the front door of the hospital? Do you have access to the internet? No. Why not? Because all patient records are sent over the internet, so you can't use the internet. So from standpoint of what I'm trying to do, it would be worthless. I have an MP3 player that doesn't require the internet at all to function. It's already pre-recorded on a hard disk in the player. And
Right.
he said to me, Mr. Perkins, touche, touche. And I don't know that if there's anything that we can do. As I said, our program was really designed for adults and spouses. Um, but as you have conversations with your young adults, you might want to consider the possibility of just kind of opening up a little bit of a conversation. How is mom or dad dealing with the departure of the spouse? And if she's having a difficult time, maybe we can supply some MP3 players for your group to give to the spouses uh, of those men and women who's given the all, and help them get through the night.
That would be wonderful, Dan. And I am in contact with parents. We don't let, we're not going to let any child into the program without having extensive conversations with the parents. And we're structured in such a way that when the permanent program actually rolls, there'll be, every week, there'll be 2 different parent chaperones with us, with the children, because we want them involved. We want them to experience some of the same things. So yes, definitely. Thank you.
So if you go to the foundation's website, songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us, I'll have Jim send you the link, and Jim can send me a link of where I can get you.
Yep.
We'll connect off the air and see if we can work together to try and get some of our players to you to give to the parents.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
So Jeffrey, you've got a couple days left in your fundraising and your silent auction. Tell us a little bit about what you're offering and what people can bid on, because you have some really cool stuff. We've had you on the TV show and the radio show in the past, and now today again, kind of as a last minute push. Fill me and the guys in on this.
Okay, well, slightly less than last minute because we had extended it to the 20th of April. But
Awesome.
Yeah, we're hosting a silent auction, and basically there's one prize that people are bidding on, and it's a $90,000 boat, engine, and trailer package. Incredible vessel. It's a Pacific skiff. It's built in the Pacific Northwest. I'm very familiar with them. That is the prize. The highest bidder will receive that prize. For the non-boating crowd, we're offering them an opportunity to actually bid on the wholesale cash value of the vessel, and we're doing that through a guaranteed buyout. So once again, the silent auction is running until the 20th of April. We're hoping to raise the necessary capital so that we can go operational this summer. We intend to accommodate up to 170 children, teenage children.
Wow.
And
you have a website for the auction?
Yes, it's healingthewounds.org. That's our website, and there's an auction page. But the photo of the boat is featured on the front page. You click on it, and it takes you to the auction page. It's an incredible, Dan, it's an incredible vessel because I've spent 50 years of my life, maybe 55 years of my life on the water. I happen to own one. And I typically launch out of Mystic, Connecticut. So that kind of resonated with me for that reason, of course, as well.
It's a beautiful area, Mystic Seaport.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And if you like seafood, I don't think you could beat some of the places there.
Yeah, I've eaten there many times at a picnic table on the side of the road.
Well, you know what? One of the places, I don't know if you're familiar with Abbott's Lobster in the Rough, but I took the teenagers there, and they really had a wonderful lunch there. And one boy had never gotten near a clam, and the other ones were egging him on, and we finally got him to eat a steamer. So that it was, and he liked it. So there was something that came out of that. But so the auctions, once again, people can bid on this. We gave them some control. We didn't want to run a lottery type contest. We wanted them to have control. So, once again, the highest bidder will secure the keys to the vessel.
Now, Jeffrey, I know that you're raising some good things. You're doing some incredible things for your organization. We are going to get into a political discussion here. Would you be able to stay and hang out with us, or do you not want to? do you not want to get into politics with me, Dan, and IQ?
You know what? I'm trying to separate healing the wounds from the political conversation, but
Yes.
you know, I have been political in the past. I would love to hear you out.
Well, I want to start
Caught
with,
my curiosity.
well,
Okay.
Dan. What do you make of the big story that is going on with this border crisis and everything?
Well, I know that it's going to seem